Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to part 4 of my Adobe Camera RAW tutorial. Now, in this video, we are going to look at the color mixer and the color grading options in the main panels over here. But before I start that, I had somebody ask me the question a little while ago, which was quite interesting really, because I'd never thought of it myself, and it's actually a great question. He asked me how he could move these panels around to change the order, to put them in the order that he would like to use them. So for example, if he uses geometry a lot, he would like geometry to be further up on the list here rather than have to keep going all the way down for it. So actually when he asked me the question, I wasn't sure if it could be done. At the same time I thought, well, actually what a great idea, because for most of us, there's usually a select few panels that we pretty much use all the time. And for me, the geometry and the optics panels I use a lot more than many of the others. So it would be good to have them higher up actually. So I looked into it, and yes, it can be done, and it is actually very simple. So all we do is we go over to the panel area here and right click with your mouse to bring up these options. Now in these options you can choose multiple panel mode, responsive panel mode, or single panel mode. So just to give you a quick rundown on what these single, responsive and multiple panel modes do, the single panel mode will simply allow you to have one open at a time. So when you open one, it will always close another. So you can only ever have one panel open at a time. If you choose multiple panel mode, then you can have multiple panels open at the same time. Quite simply, we close them. And responsive probably responds to how you use them. Maybe if you're using certain panels more often, it will keep those panels open for you. I'm not 100% sure on that, but check it out yourself. Okay, I keep mine in multiple panel mode. But the answer to the question about how to move the panels around and change the order is quite simply here. Let's go up to Edit Panels to Show. And this brings up this little box here. Now here you can actually untick to remove any panels that you don't want to use. So for example, if you don't ever want to use the calibration, simply untick that, click OK, it will close and reopen. And this time with the calibration panel missing. So if you want to remove any panels that you don't use, simply untick them first of all. Okay, and then in order to move them around, this would be the default order. So at any time you can click that to put it back to its default order. But if you want to move them around, so let's say I want to put the geometry panel further up, if I click to select it, okay, and then you'll see this little info message up here. Use the up and down arrow keys to change the order of the selected panel. So when I've got this highlighted, then I just use my cursor keys to move it up, quite simply. So I can bring my geometry panel right up to the top here. I could take it to the top completely if I want to. Profile will always be on top, that won't change I think. But I can bring it to below the basic, for example. Okay, and the same with my optics. I could select that and I could bring that up here. So then I've got my basic, my geometry, my optics panels all up the top where I want them. And once I've set my order, I just click OK. Again, Adobe Camera RAW will close and reopen again. And now I've got my preferred order of panels. Okay, so to the person who asked me this question, thank you for asking, and here is your answer. And it's great also for me to know this. So on to the topic of today's video, the color mixer and color grading panels. So let's get started. Let's start with the color mixer panel first of all. Okay, now the color mixer panel allows you to make adjustments to the individual colors within your photo. So it's a really great tool. And we have the saturation tool up here in the basic panel, as you probably well know, you can boost saturation or you can boost vibrance, but that affects the overall image. So if we boost saturation, we basically boost the color intensity of all of the colors in your photo. With the vibrance tool, it's slightly different. What that does is boost the colors that are less vibrant within your image and leaves the very vibrant colors alone. But still, it doesn't give you a choice for individual colors. So if you want to make adjustments to a specific color or specific colors within your photo, then you want to go to the color mixer tool. This is the best place to go. Now when you first open it, you'll see adjust. If you pull down the adjust panel, you've got two choices, HSL and color. HSL stands for these three: hue, saturation and luminance. So what you can do, the hue is the color itself, okay? So what you can do here is make adjustments to the color itself. So for example, if you've got red, then you can adjust that red. So you can make it a deeper red, a lighter red, for example. Essentially you can see here, for example, so on the red slider, if you pull it towards the left, it starts to add some more magenta. If you pull it to the right, it starts to add more orange. So it's mixing these two to give you a different color essentially within. Okay, saturation is just like before. If we make adjustments to the saturation, we're not changing the color itself, but we're boosting that color, making it richer, more vibrant. Okay, but we're not actually changing the color itself. Luminance is how bright the color is. So again, for a specific color, if we've got red, we can make that red lighter, or we can make it darker. If we think the red itself is too light, then we can darken it. If we think it's too dark, then we can lighten it. So in this case, you're lightening and darkening, but instead of lightening, it's a bit like lightening and darkening the image. Instead, in this case, you're lightening and darkening the specific color within your image. So that's the three: hue, saturation and luminance. So when you select the panel here, you can see it opens each panel as it is, or you can choose all, and then you can see you've got all three panels open at once. Okay, now color. Now this does the same thing. The only difference is that instead of getting, if we go here, that we've got the hue, the saturation, you can open them individually, and then you've got all of the colors and the sliders here. In this case, instead of that, all you do is you get the three sliders here, and then you can select the color you want to work on. So this is ideal if you only want to work on one specific color. Then you can just come over here and choose, for example, orange, and then you've got all three sliders there to make adjustments to that specific color. So it's a bit more focused, that's all, but it does exactly the same as the other one. So it's basically down to if you want to work on multiple colors, if you want all of the sliders available, or if you want to work on one specific color and just make adjustments to the hue, saturation and luminance all at once. So let's have a closer look at the effect of these. I've got three images here. This image has got lots of different colors in, so it's quite a good image to work with. I've also got a sunset here, so let's use that to look at the reds. Now the sunsets obviously have a lot of red in them. This particular sunset was very, very red, really intense and beautiful. So it's a good example to see what the red slider does. If I select the hue, okay, now I'm going to change the red color. So if I pull this back and add a bit more magenta, I'm changing the red. It's not, you know, I'm actually making it a much darker red here. This is actually quite nice. But if I pull it back the other way, if we reset that, you can double click any of these pointers to reset them back to 0. So that's quite a handy little tip. And if we pull it this way to add more orange, there we go. Now we can see that we're making the sunset more orange. So that's a really good, clear example of what the hue can do in the red channel. Now if we set saturation, now you'll see the difference here. Now if I pull the slider up, I'm not going to change the color, but I'm going to intensify that color. There we go. If we pull it right up, yeah. Now on all of these panels you've got this little eye. If you click this eye, you can undo what you've done. So you can see, it's a good way to look at the before and after effects of what you've done. Now if we pull this back, we're actually desaturating that color. So we're making it less intense. If you pull it right the way back, you'll remove pretty much the whole of the color. Now again, you see this has only affected the red channel. It's not affected any of the other colors. Now we've got some yellow here. So if we pull back the yellow slider, now you can see on the sun, we've taken away the yellow there. If we reset those two, we can again pull up slider to intensify. We pull that off, there we go. Yeah, to intensify that yellow a bit. Reset that. Similarly, if we go back to the hue, again we can change that yellow. We're adding more green to it in this case. If we pull it to the right, or in this case we're adding more orange by the looks of it. Yeah, so it's like a bit of a color mixer, you know. We're mixing the colors when we're adjusting the hue. We're mixing other colors to change the color properties itself, not intensify the color. So we're changing the color itself. Put that back. Luminance. Again, let's go to the red because that's the dominant color here in this image. If we pull this up, in this case we're, as you can see, brightening all the red. We turn that off, turn that on, turn that off. We can see that we've lightened the colors here. Similarly, zero that and pull it back. Here we've darkened the reds in the image. Okay, so that's a good overview of these three: hue, saturation, and luminance. Now, as I said, again, we can go to color. In this case, I can select the red because that's the one I want to work on, and that way then this is quite useful because this image is predominantly red. This is what I want to work on, so I want to play around mostly with this, and I can then play with all three all at once, yeah, to get the effect that I'm looking for. Yeah, and I can work specifically on that color channel and not have to keep switching between the hue, saturation, and luminance. I've got all three sliders there. Zero that and take that back. Okay, so let's go to, first of all, this color, this image. We got a nice lot of green here and a lot of blue. So again, let's focus on those. Yeah, if we want to make adjustments to the green. Now this image was shot in the morning, so morning light is lower, it's much warmer, so you can see that the greens have of a warm tone to them, kind of yellowy orange, you know, they're not super rich green. So if we want to make them greener, then on the hue channel I can pull up the green here. Now I've made the trees and everything a richer green, a darker green, much nicer. If we zero that, if you want to pull it the other way, if you want to add more warmth, let's add more yellow. So we're pulling it this way, we're adding more yellow, so we're adding more warmth to it in this case. So depending on the effect that you want to go for. Now in the sky, we've got blue, so we can do a similar thing here. If we want to change that blue, make it a lighter blue. In this case we're adding more cyan, in this case we're adding more purple to it. I think that doesn't work. I would put that back to 0 for now. And then we can go to the saturation. Now if you want to saturate that blue, I think that blue is just a nice blue. I think it's just a little pale. So in this case we could pull up the saturation slider on the blue channel to increase the blue in that sky. So that's nice. Okay, and now we have a completely different image. Let's undo that from before and after. Okay, this image here, down here we have some kind of brownish purplish trees down here. So there's no brown, so typically depending on this image, this is either most likely going to be maybe more towards the red color or more towards the purple color. So typically when you make an adjustment on the hue, you're going to see it. So if we pull up this, let's see what it does. There's no adjustment there, is there? There's a little bit of adjustment in the castle, on the castle itself. So let's go down to the purples or the magentas. So let's make adjustments to the purple. There we go. Now that's adjusted that nicely. Switch it off to see the difference. By adjusting the purple in this, we've really enriched that color nicely. Does the magenta make any difference? No. Again, saturation. Let's see if we can saturate that purple a bit more if we want to. Oh, there we go. That's too much. Let's take that back down to 0. Okay. Now, let's zoom into that. Now, this was shot in the evening, low light, so we've got some nice warm light on the side of that castle itself, which is definitely more orange than red. So let's see if we can make some adjustments to the orange slider to affect that. There we go. Now if we pull that back, yeah, we've made the orange light on there much darker. Not very nice. Or we can pull it back, we can add more yellow to it. Okay. I think the color on there is just fine the way it is. We could perhaps maybe intensify that a bit. So let's pull up the saturation on that a bit. Okay, 0 that, see the difference, there we go. So I think that works better. Pulling up the saturation on that a bit. Maybe the luminance. Or we can darken it a touch. No, I think that's fine the way it is. Oop. Okay, so there we can see the difference we've made. We've added some richer color to the forest here and a little bit of extra intensity on the color on that castle there. Okay, same with the sky. We've got a blue sky, so let's see if changing the aquas makes any effect. If we add or darken, that's not so nice, is it? Take the blue down. No, I think again the blue is just right. It's a little bit pale, so let's go to the saturation and see if we can saturate those blues a bit. There we go. Maybe the aqua We can add a touch of saturation there. Again, let's see from before and after. Okay. And here we've got lots and lots of different colors. We've got green, we've got brown, we've got red, we've got blue here, yellow. So let's have a look at the yellow here. Again, the hue. So we can pull it back this way, add more orange to it, or pull it back this way to add more green to the yellow. Maybe pull it a bit to the left. We've made it a deeper, darker yellow. Okay. The greens here, so we can pull up the greens to make it richer, greener. Okay, now the browns here, let's see if they're red or orange. Let's see if we can adjust the red. Yeah, pulling back, adjusting the red has added some richness into their into the brown coats that they're wearing. Okay, the red here also, if we look at that up here again, the red that we're pulling back here, it's making adjustments to that. We can pull it right back this way. We've made it almost orange in this case, or this way we've made it a deeper red. We've got a bit of blue here as well, so we can make adjustments to that. Pull that back, we've lightened the blue, or we've added more purple to it in this case. Zero that. Okay, so again, switch it to color, work on a specific color, or switch it to HSL and have all of the colors available and choose between the hue, saturation, or luminance, or all of them. Have them all open if you want. Onto the color grading panel. Now the color grading panel is new to Adobe Camera RAW 13, I believe. I don't think it was available before. I certainly don't remember it. But color grading is something that is more commonly known among when it comes to video, film, and things like that. It's more often used, and it's apparently usually the last thing that is done when putting together a movie or a film or any kind of video. And essentially what you do with color grading is you change the overall look of the whole, in the case of video. And it's only recently started making its way into photography, and you can do a similar thing here. Now it's not something that I use. I'm not actually that experienced with it, but from what I've seen of it, it's probably not something that I would be that interested in doing to my photos. So it's probably one of those things that either you want to do it or you don't want to do it. If you're someone who's more creative, you want to create more artistic type photos, then you want to apply this to your images, then it's probably quite useful. As I say, I'm not 100% up on it, so I'll give you a brief overview on it, but there are some other videos out there actually that are very, very good, and I'll put a link to one video I watched by one guy who really gave a much better description of it than I'm going to give you now. Okay, but basically, as I say, color grading, what you do is that you make changes to the overall image, and you can break it down between the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. So when you open the color grading panel, you get these three wheels, and then you get these three sliders underneath each wheel, and then down here you get two other sliders, the blending and the balance sliders. So you can switch and just select one wheel at a time. So if you just want to work on the shadow area, select that one, midtones, select that one, highlights, that one, and this one will give you a global. So this will affect any changes that you make here, will affect the shadows, midtones, and highlights all together. So basically the sliders will just, for example, do what they say on the tin. It will lighten or darken the shadows. Here, the highlights will lighten or darken the highlights. So it's pretty much like the shadows and highlights tool within Photoshop. And same with the midtones. Okay. And essentially what you do is that you choose where you want to make your adjustment. So if you want to make your adjustment in the highlights, then you go to this wheel here and you pull this circle here towards one of the colors, and then you can basically you're changing the tone of the highlight. So in this case you're putting an overall green tone to the highlight areas here, or you're making the highlights cooler, more blue, more magenta here, or more red. So you can give your image a look essentially. Now one handy little shortcut here is if you press the shift key, then it will lock your circle here in this position, and instead of being able to move it up and down and around, you can just limit your adjustments to along this line from middle to end. Alternatively, if you press the control key, you get a circle, and you can do the same thing. You can limit your adjustments to there within that circle, so you don't stray out. If you found this particular position here and you want to lock it there and just move it around the color spectrum, then you can control it that way. So control for the circle and shift for the line. So again, same with the shadows. You want to add a blue cooler tones to the shadow areas, or greener tone to the shadow areas, then you can do so here. Again, you can lighten and darken those shadows if you want to. So if you want to make those shadows more green, for example, we can pull those back and forth. Okay, we'll just zero that for now. Blending basically allows you to blend between the shadows, the highlights, so you can mix the two, I think. Balance, this is a bit more simpler to understand. It's a bit like your left and right speaker, you know. If you pull it towards the right, then you'll hear the right speaker more. In this case, if you pull it towards the right, it'll put more emphasis on the highlights and less emphasis on the shadows. So less of the shadow, the adjustments you've made to the shadow will have less effect if you pull it to the right, and more the adjustments you've made to the highlights will have more effect. Same if we pull it the other way. Yeah, we can see now that we've got more effect in the shadow areas and less effect in the highlights. That's basically that. It's quite simple really. So let's zero that. So that's color grading. Okay, basic introduction to it. As I say, I'm not an expert when it comes to these things, so if you're someone who's into color grading and you want to do more of it, I'll put a link, as I said, I'll put it also in the description. The link to this other video I watched was a very, very good and detailed description of color grading. So I hope you found this video useful, and as usual, if you did, please give this video a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and check out some of my other videos. Okay, thanks for watching.